In the heart of the night, this world will burn bright. We will set it alight. In the heart of the night, in the heart of the night, this world will burn bright. We will set it alight. In the heart of the night.
Hello everyone, I am Anthropomantic Fiend, and I do horror-related things on the internet. I have finished what I am calling Season 1 of Heart of the Night Reviews, which was the movies from the 30 Nightmare Movies box set, and now I have moved on to a box set of 41 horror movies put out by the same company, but it's a lot of older horror this time, which I prefer. This movie is, as you know from the title if you're watching this, The Gorilla. This is a 1939 movie. It's in black and white, and it stars Lionel Atwill, who was in Son of Frankenstein. He was Inspector Krogh, the police inspector who was missing an arm. Most people probably know the parody of him from Young Frankenstein better, but the original character is amazing too. I'm going off on a tangent. He was in Mystery of the Wax Museum, the original version of House of Wax, because there was Mystery of Wax Museum, then there was House of Wax with Vincent Price, and then there was the other House of Wax that I haven't seen yet. I'm going off on another tangent. And he was also in Mark of the Vampire, which is a really good movie, which is also a remake of London After Midnight with Lon Chaney, which is gone now. But anyway, he is a great actor. Look up a bunch of the stuff he's done if you want to just watch some good classic movies. Also in this is the almighty Bela Lugosi. If you don't know who he is, why are you here? He played Dracula in 1931, and he's created the version of Dracula that everybody knows at this point, and he's been in a bunch of other things. He was in Son of Frankenstein with Lionel Atwill as Igor, and he was in Mark of the Vampire with Lionel Atwill as Count Mora. What hasn't Lugosi been in besides the original Frankenstein? Anyway, Lugosi, what do I even need to say about him? They're both in this, and they're both obviously great. Also in this movie are the Ritz brothers, who are this comedy trio, and I'll get to them in a minute, but they're in this movie. This movie is based on a stage play, and it's one of those classic old dark house murder mystery horror movies that was common in the 1930s. This was very late into the 30s at this point, 39, but still, that was a thing. And it continued to be a thing a little bit into the 40s, although that started to shift eventually. It's one of those movies, and those movies, for whatever reason, decided that having a killer gorilla was like a standard trope for these kinds of movies. I could not tell you why, but killer gorillas are a thing in black and white horror movies, significantly. The movie is very much your standard classic horror whodunit. There's this killer called the Gorilla who's on the loose. We don't know if it's an actual gorilla or if it's a guy calling himself the Gorilla or somebody who's setting a killer gorilla on other people. We don't know who he is, but he's been on this murdering spree. Lionel Atwill plays Mr. Stevens, who's this wealthy aristocratic guy with a creepy mansion, as they have. He gets a note from the gorilla saying he's going to die within 24 hours. He calls in the police to protect him. Things just get gradually twistier from there in this old mansion, which we never leave for the whole duration of the movie. It's all set in the mansion. The soundtrack for this movie is pretty standard. It's your traditional 30s symphonic horror movie score, which I like, but it's also, if I'm remembering correctly, pretty absent for most of the movie. There's not a lot of soundtrack happening, it's mostly silence. I might be wrong, but I don't remember the music standing out to me. Standard, decent soundtrack. The movie isn't on the same level as some horror movie classics, but it looks really nice. The mansion is beautiful. It's a creepy old mansion with the secret panels, and there's always lightning outside, and there's like a rug that's like an exotic wildcat of some kind. And it's just your typical creepy old mansion, and I love it. The movie's very well shot. Again, nothing super stand out, but it's very nice and shadowy and eerie, and I like that. The story and the characters are pretty standard horror whodunit. It's actually very, very cliche, but it's based on one of those sort of classic plays in that vein. It takes like a comedy slant as well. Again, a lot of the characters are very stereotypical, but overall, the actors that they get to play them do a really good job with them. The niece and nephew-in-law of Stevens, Atwell's character, they're fairly generic cookie-cutter hero and heroine characters, but the actors do a good job with what they're given. And of course, Atwell is great and Lugosi is great. I'll get to why Lugosi is great in a little bit. And then there's the Ritz brothers. The Ritz brothers are not good in this movie. They're kind of funny, but it really does just feel like they took the script for a decent horror mystery and just decided to cram the Ritz brothers in there because they assumed it would make more money, which maybe it did, I don't know. It just doesn't work. Taking like a straight horror movie and injecting like a comedy group in it can work. I mean, there's obviously great movies that came out later like Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein, which is fantastic. But the difference with that is that Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein, they took a story that was very much sort of the monster mashup thing that they had done with House of Frankenstein and House of Dracula, and they wrote in the characters of Chick and Wilbur, Abbott and Costello's characters, so that the story worked with these two comedic characters as the focal point, because Dracula wants Wilbur's brain to put in the monster's body because he's such a simpleton. His goofiness is a plot point in the story. They sort of play off of that while not losing the horror element. With this, even when the Ritz brothers are saying the stupidest garbage on the planet, everybody around them is still playing it straight and don't look at them like they're idiots. They look at them like they're normal detectives, which should be funny, but I just find it really annoying. Because they're really annoying. They just kind of shout stupid stuff quite a bit. They have some funny bits, but for the most part, I could kind of see all of their comedy coming a mile away. And it's just like, why would you hire these guys to protect you? If they had set up the movie being a comedy, I don't know. I feel like it could have worked if the comedy was better. But it's not. It's just not that great. All three of them, I don't really feel like they have distinct personalities, and they just reuse a lot of jokes, and there were funny bits that I wasn't expecting. Like, there's a part when there's supposed to be something that happens at midnight, and they're all checking their watches, and like one of them's like, mine says 10:30, like mine says 11:20, and mine says something else, and Lionel Atwell comes in and he's like, well, yeah, but my watch says it's 11:45 exactly, and one of them just looks down and goes, remind me to put some hands on this watch. So there are funny moments, but they aren't great. The legitimately funny moments are few and far between. You just see most of the gags coming. And then there's Kitty, who is one of the employees at the mansion, and she's more or less supposed to be comic relief, but she's not great either. She's just very loud and screamy. The comedy is just not the best. It just feels like they assumed that if they just shouted enough, it would be funny. And in some instances, stupid stuff like that can be funny to me, but it just wasn't in this case. I was just like, you have a decent story here and a decent movie, and you've just thrown these screamy characters into it, and it's annoying. On the other hand, Lugosi in this movie, his role is small, but he's my favorite character, and that's not just because he's Lugosi, although that's part of it. He plays this butler in the house who always seems fairly suspicious, but he's just the butler. At the same time, you do not want to mess with him, because when the Ritz brothers arrive and they're like questioning him for literally no reason other than that he looks creepy to them, and they're just like, "What's your problem?" And one of them starts making fun of his Hungarian accent, and I think tries to punch him. Lugosi just grabs him and throws him to the ground, which I was not expecting, and it was amazing. And he'll just do things in such a deliberately sinister way that are just completely harmless. Like, there's a scene where he's got a blanket and he's going towards Stevens's Lionel Atwell's character's niece, and he's got a blanket and he's coming towards the camera very slowly, and he's like leaning in the way he does in Dracula to bite someone, like he's gonna suffocate her with the blanket or something, but he's just putting it over her to keep her warm. Lugosi is great. It's a tiny thing, but the humor with him is a lot funnier. He's funnier than the Ritz brothers in this movie. I think Lugosi should have done a lot more horror comedies, because he was phenomenal in this. It's a decent little murder mystery with a good cast. The Ritz brothers kind of screw it up, but I thought Lugosi was amazing. And the movie did actually keep me guessing with a lot of the murder mystery stuff, but it never really seemed like anybody was trying to solve anything. It was just kind of the Ritz brothers running around the mansion and just kind of pressing buttons to see what happens, and somehow eventually solving the mystery, even though they have no idea what they're doing. So it's kind of hard to follow what the different plots of the mystery are when your detectives are absolute idiots and they don't know what's happening. That said, it's a good little late 30s horror thriller movie. Oh, and yeah, there's a gorilla in the movie, because of course there is. I mean, we see the gorilla at the very, very beginning of the movie, and you know it's a guy in a suit, but for what it is, it looks good, so there's that. So the gorilla is a fun little vintage horror thriller movie. And I thought it was just brought down by the Ritz brothers, and they could have either not been in the movie or seriously stepped up their comedy, and it would have been a great little horror comedy thriller. This is a fun one if you want to check it out, but it's definitely not a must-watch. So that's my overall feelings on the gorilla, so I'll get into some spoilery stuff now. So there are some fun moments that I wasn't expecting. For example, there is a scene where the lights go out in Mr. Stevens', I don't even know how to do that. It's hard when the name ends with an S. But his study, the lights go out and he vanishes, and so the Ritz brothers are trying to figure it out, and one of them, the lead guy, the one who sort of appointed himself as the head, even though I can often not tell any of them apart, is just like convinces the two others to sit in the chair, and he'll just go 1, 2, 3, and he gets a little bit more nervous about it each time, but he'll flip the light off and on, and the other one will disappear. And then he brings in Kitty and tells her to sit in the chair, because he's not going to get in the chair, and then he flips the light off and on, and she's still in the chair, but then you look over and he's gone, and it's Lugosi, and it's amazing. We don't ever know how Lugosi gets into the room. There are moments where it's just seems like he can walk through walls. It's never really explained, but I like to think that Lugosi can just walk through walls. So that was fun. And we discover that this guy comes in and says that Stevens has been stealing from his clients' bank accounts for years and was planning to fake his death as the gorilla, according to this guy. And this guy just wants money, and he's very angry. And so the plot thickens when he arrives. And then we've already had some action with a gorilla, an actual gorilla that we've seen full on camera, running around the mansion, wrecking stuff. And we find out that this is a gorilla, but it is not the gorilla. This is a gorilla named Poe, which I assume is an homage to the orangutan, which was changed to a killer ape in a lot of the movies in Murders in the Rue Morgue. But I don't know. Anyway, there's a gorilla in the basement, but it's not the gorilla. This gorilla trainer from the zoo has been told to bring the zoo, maybe circus, don't remember, but has been told to bring this gorilla there to do his act, and then gets knocked unconscious and the gorilla is set loose. But we've also seen like gorilla hands coming out of the bookcase and grabbing people, so we don't know what's up with that. We find out evidently that Stevens is dead, and our heroine character starts crying, and this is another moment where the Ritz brothers completely fail because they're still trying to play off her and be funny while she thinks her dad is dead. You don't do that. It doesn't work. It's in poor taste. You can have movies where the comedy is in poor taste, but it's just not funny here because it's a horror comedy, and if you're still, I don't know, there are always exceptions to the rules. This one is not. It just doesn't work, and you're just like, shut up. Then earlier on, we've seen this guy walking around the mansion who's come in through the window, and we don't really know who he is. We think he might be the gorilla, and he reveals his police badge and that he is a legitimate investigator who's trying to investigate the gorilla. But then we find that he goes through the passages in the house to the basement where Lionel Atwill Stevens has been tied up in front of this microphone machine because they've been hearing like things from the radio about how the gorilla will be here to kill Stevens in 1 minute, and they can't find Stevens anywhere. And he explains that Stevens has been the gorilla all along, and he was planning to kill his niece and nephew for their inheritance money. And so they bring him up, and he's denying this, and they shake the inspector's hand, and his glove comes off, and you see like gorilla fur and makeup on there. And they've pulled this sort of triple twist on you where he is the gorilla and he was forcing Atwill to do all of this. So then they catch him. Once the gorilla is revealed, he's about to shoot one of the Ritz brothers, and Bela Lugosi comes up behind him with a gun and basically saves the day. So Lugosi is, as I said, a complete badass in this movie, and definitely the best part of it. So yes, if you just want to see Lugosi being amazing, there are lots of movies where you can do that, but this is a special one. So just thought I'd throw that in there before I forgot, because how dare I forget such an amazing part of the movie. And we get some more stupid comedy from the Ritz brothers, and that's the end of the movie. So, cool, unexpected twist, but nothing too terribly out of the way. So, thank you for watching. I hope I will have some more entertaining, better movies to talk about in a little bit. I actually know I do, because I know what the next movie I'm going to be talking about is, and I love this movie, so that'll be fun. So, I hope you enjoyed this. Maybe you'll want to check out this movie. I don't know, but thanks for watching, and I will hopefully see you in another video. Bye.